Welcome to Andy Staples on 3. Happy Monday. Happy spring break, everybody. I realize I look like I'm in front of a green screen. They said, put an image of paradise behind Andy. It's not a green screen. It's spring break, everybody. Well, spring break for the kids, not spring break for us, because college football, college basketball, they never stop. We don't take days off. Besides, we got conference tournaments. We got brawls in women's conference tournament finals. We got Brent Venables, the head coach of the Oklahoma Sooners, joining us today. Come on. Who's got it better than us? Oh, wait, can we say that anymore now that Jim Harbaugh is not in college football? But we have a absolutely fun week ahead. We got a fun show today. Brent Venables will get you pumped up to see the Oklahoma Sooners in the SEC. It's a very interesting situation they're in. You know, and you've heard me a million times talking about their win total going, what are we talking about? 7.5. What are we talking about? Now, obviously, we don't go over win totals with Brent Venables. That would be a little, probably beyond the pale there. But we do talk to him about breaking in Jackson Arnold. We got them going to the SEC. We got him dealing with NIL, with the transfer portal, which is really interesting when you consider where he came from, because he was at Clemson for so long with Dabo Swinney. And Dabo Swinney's obviously taken a very different tack than Brent Venables has as a head coach in this era. So we'll talk to Brent Venables about that. But first, we got to talk about a brawl at the end of the SEC tournament final in the women's game. Now, this is a huge matchup. This is LSU, the defending national champs, against South Carolina, the undefeated number one team in the country. Now, remember, these teams played last year. South Carolina won in Columbia, but they did not play in the NCAA tournament because South Carolina lost to Iowa, and then LSU beat Iowa for the national title. So this very well could be the national championship game. And I think the South Carolina players really wanted to show against LSU, hey, we are still the best team. We were the best team last year. This was a styles make fights thing that got them beat against Iowa. And South Carolina and LSU went at it again. And late in the game, you had an incident where Malaysia Fulwiley from South Carolina steals the ball from Floje Johnson. Floje Johnson grabs her, commits the foul out of frustration, stop the break, and then stuff starts happening. And so Camila Cardozo, the 6'7" center for South Carolina, comes flying in, decks Floje Johnson, and then it's on. You see Floje Johnson's brother come over onto the court. He got escorted out. I think it was said he was arrested, and then it was clarified later he was not arrested, but he was ejected from the arena. It was a crazy scene. Crazy scene. And you've got Dawn Staley, probably the most accomplished coach in women's basketball right now. You've got Kim Mulkey, very accomplished as well, multiple national titles and quite a flair. And man, this one had it all. Here's Kim Mulkey talking about the fight afterward in the way that only Kim Mulkey can.
No one wants to be a part of that. No one wants to see that ugliness. But I can tell you this. I wish she would have pushed Angel Reese. Don't push a kid. You 6'8", don't push somebody that little. That was uncalled for, in my opinion. Let those two girls that were jawing, let them go at it.
This is a very football coach way to respond to this, by the way. Kim Mulkey sounding more like a football coach, being like, we'll let him go head up. We'll settle our differences that way. Who needs technical fouls? Dawn Staley took a little bit different tack.
But I'm going to say this. Fly J came to me after the game, right after the game, and she just apologized and said she's not that type of player. And I really appreciate that. It's something that somebody won't ever hear if I didn't say anything. And she's not. She's a really good person. Things just got escalated. I'll take responsibility for what happened from our side of it, which is we don't, we talk about these things as a team, and we try to, as much as possible, express to them how not to react in those type of situations. But real time is real time. And I know that, anybody, Camilla as well as the other 4 or 5 players that were ejected. I know if they had a chance to do it all over again, they would do it differently. But now we have that. I just don't want the people who are tuning in to women's basketball see that and think, that is our game, because it isn't. Our game is a really beautiful thing. And to be quite honest, this is a part of it now. So we have to fix it and we have to move on.
So I don't think she has to apologize to fans of women's basketball and say this is not part of the game. It is. It's part of basketball. People get heated. It's okay. Listen, this makes more people want to watch the NCAA tournament because I want to see these two teams play again. I want to see these two teams play again for the national title. We thought that's the matchup we're going to get last season, and Caitlin Clark bombed threes all over South Carolina. And we got a different matchup, which was also awesome. But think about this. Like, is there a matchup in the men's tournament that you are as excited about as either LSU South Carolina or a South Carolina Iowa or an LSU Iowa rematch? This is good for the game. Say what you will. Look, fighting happens in sports. It's just part of the game. And so we'll see what happens. 6 players got ejected. And ESPN initially said that everybody who left the bench was going to be ineligible for the first game of the NCAA tournament, and then clarified that later. Well, let's wait and see what we hear from the SEC, from the various folks involved, to find out who's going to be suspended for this thing. Camila Cardozo probably almost certainly going to be suspended for the first game of the NCAA tournament. Now, you say, okay, that's bad. That's the NCAA tournament, but it's a 1 versus a 16. And I know we had, in the men's side, Purdue Fairleigh Dickinson last year be like Zach Edey not playing for Purdue in that game. But 16 has not beaten a 1 in the women's tournament yet. And I'm not sure this is going to be the first year, even if Camila Cardozo can't play for the Gamecocks. So that was a crazy, crazy ending. And just get ready for that. This is conference tournament heaven right now, because the mid-major tournaments in the men's side just starting to wrap up. The high major tournaments getting started this week. There are NCAA tournament bids to be locked down. There are 4 teams already in the men's side that have locked down their bids. And so we are going to talk to James Fletcher III about that later in the show. We're going to talk to Brent Venables very soon. But before that, a reminder also from the women's basketball game about how cutthroat coaching in college is, whether it's football, basketball, lacrosse, it doesn't matter. You don't win, you are out. And sometimes it comes at the worst possible time. This is a question addressed to Kayla Ard at the Mountain West women's basketball tournament. So she's the Utah State coach. The Aggies had just lost. She gets a question about rebuilding for next year. Listen to her answer.
And how do you plan to rebuild for next season?
I'm not going to be rebuilding. I just coached my last game at Utah State. I spoke with Diana, and they're going in a different direction, and I respect her decision, and I hope they get a really good coach in. I'm assuming that's going to be the last question. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
All. Thank you, Coach.
I'm not going to rebuild because I just got fired. And then, oh, by the way, I think that was my last question. Like, how? That is how cutthroat that business is. So she walks off the court, you're fired, goes into the press conference. Nobody knows that she's fired yet, gets asked about rebuilding. Oh, by the way, I'm fired. I do appreciate Kayla Ard. First of all, way more patience class than I would have had in that situation, because I'd have just torched every bridge. I'd have killed my buyout. They wouldn't have paid me my buyout after what I would have said 5 seconds after getting fired. And then also, I do love just turning to the monitor and being like, I think that was my last question. Like, I'm not answering any more questions. I don't even work here anymore. I'm not even supposed to be here today. Unbelievable. Cutthroat business. A cutthroat business, this college sports. And you wonder why we think these coaches are so crazy. But that's what can happen. You can just walk off the court. You're done. Oh, by the way, go answer some questions about that. It's going to be a wild week, an absolutely wild week. And that's why, even in paradise, we don't stop. Before we get to Brent Venables, we got to talk about Game Time. Download that Game Time app. Use the code Staples, $20 off your first purchase. There is no better time than right now to be using Game Time. So you want to follow your team in the NCAA basketball tournament, men's or women's? Well, you probably, if you're let's say you're a South Carolina fan on the women's side, you know where your team's going. If you're an Arizona fan, you probably know where your team's going. Well, maybe not for the second weekend yet, but what if you're a 6 seed, 7, like Florida? They just lost to Vanderbilt, probably knocked them down one entire seed line. You have no idea if you're a Florida fan where they're going to get sent for the NCAA tournament. It could be Omaha, it could be Pittsburgh, it could be Charlotte. Well, use Game Time, and when the bracket comes out, you pop on the app, you grab the best price ticket you can find. You can look exactly at where your seat's going to be. You can see what the view will be like in the arena. If you're going to Pittsburgh, by the way, they use the Penguins photos, so you'll see a hockey arena. But just imagine a basketball court there. It's a tremendously easy thing, and this is the perfect time to use Game Time. So download that app. Use the code Staples. First purchase $20 off. No better way to get last-minute tickets, and there's no better situation for Game Time. So Selection Sunday, hold your Game Time app. As soon as you see where your team's going, go follow them. All right. Speaking of following your team, Oklahoma fans have some new places to go as their team enters a new conference. They're going to Auburn this year. They're going to LSU this year. You get your Game Time apps out for that one too. And you're going to be especially pumped. So you may want to go get tickets to every game after you hear this. Brent Venables joins us talking Sooners. We are joined by Oklahoma coach Brent Venables in front of the drip wall in his maybe the nicest head coach's office in America. I've been in there, Brent, a few years ago. There's a fireplace. There's like 3 different separate meeting areas, and you've got every Air Jordan known to man. I mean, it's when the recruits walk in, they got to be blown away, right?
Yeah, it's a pretty nice spot, no doubt about it. I don't spend much time in here unless the recruits are here, but no, it's nice. Carol Stoops did a wonderful job.
That's right, and then Bob retired like right after it got finished.
Yeah, he didn't have any time to unpack his boxes. Actually, he had time, but he knew he was going to do it, and so he had the boxes. He didn't unpack them.
Well, I imagine you are feeling quite at home going into year 3 at OU. And I think it's interesting because you took this job knowing that the SEC move was coming, and you were always getting questions about it, but you had games you had to worry about in the Big 12. How much more can you think about that actively? Are you prepping for playing the teams of the SEC now?
Yeah, I mean, again, that we've been transitioning for a couple of years in just a lot of our programmatic things, staffing, some of our structures. Certainly, we're trying to build a roster that can compete in the SEC. And the SEC, I think everybody knows, it goes without saying, is a very deep conference, and with both excellent rosters and really good coaches, and fan bases that take a backseat to nobody. Incredibly passionate, and the commitment to football and really all sports is really incredible, and can compete with anybody in the country, and better than most that way. So, we knew this opportunity was coming down the road, and certainly it goes without saying how this all happened, but we're going a year early, and it's an exciting time. And there'll be a transition just in regards to learning the conference. We're trying to bridge that gap as quickly and expeditiously as we can when it comes to figuring out who the teams are, what their DNA is on all 3 phases, what their rosters look like. And, we have that going on, but we spend the most time on focusing on us, our development, our improvement, just trying to get better one day at a time, and recruiting to a profile that whether we were going to the SEC or within Big 12 or in any other conference that, meets the standards of what we're looking for to be a championship program. And so, now that we're going to the SEC, we don't change, necessarily, what we're looking for. I think, over the course of time that, that we will have an opportunity to maybe get into a few more places geographically from a footprint standpoint. But Oklahoma, we've signed guys 15 plus states, in 3 straight classes, across the country. And Oklahoma does have a brand that can get into, any doorway, high school or home, across the country. And I think it's decade after decade after decade of excellence and success has led to that, a respect that the Oklahoma brand has from coast to coast.
Well, and I heard you get asked about, the roster construction for the SEC, and you said, hey, we're not really trying to make a different roster for the SEC. My assumption was that you got in there and we're trying to build a roster that can win a national championship, which that's what you guys did at Clemson. You had to build rosters that could compete with whoever the best team in the SEC or the Big 12 or the Big 10 was that you would wind up playing in the playoff. How far along are you on, from that respect in terms of the body types you want, the depth you want?
Well, I love our guys, and it ain't ever good enough. So, you always want more. That's just how coaches are. And I think if, as you chase winning and chase success, that I think that is a mindset. But, you always want more, bigger, longer guys. You want more depth. That's just the way it is. I don't know if we can ever satisfy ourselves, but no doubt about it, we can compete at a really, really high level, and we're working hard to just daily improvement to get better so that we can compete. With the competitive depth at that conference, week in and week out. I think that'll be the biggest test of the program, and where we're at is playing, Texas type teams every year. We were used to Texas, or again, there's a lot of very successful programs right here in this conference as well. You look at 2 former Big 12 teams, and Missouri and certainly Texas A&M, and but that's probably what you understand, being in the footprint and Clemson in that part of the country, knowing we played SEC teams every single year, and certainly we didn't play them every week though. And I get that. That's a very real thing too. But the competitive depth of the conference, top to bottom, in the environments that you're going to play in every single week, the Oklahoma fans aren't going to be. They're not going to outnumber the home team like it some places in the Big 12, and by any stretch. But that's exciting. That challenge is some of the allure and some of the draw of going, to that conference too. So
you are very old on defense this year. You get Billy Stutzman back, or Danny Stutzman back. You get Billy Bowman back. How important is that these guys have been there? Now you've got a new coordinator on defense, but it's also your defense. How important is that they know what you want, what needs to be done? And I mean, you may not even have to tell them. They can just tell the young guys.
Yeah, I think it's important, as you're trying to build a stable program that has, continuity and stability. Those are things to me that that have been a part of championship locker rooms that, through at 3 different places, at Kansas State, at Oklahoma, and then at Clemson. And what we're trying to build here in a very unstable time in college football, where rosters can be very fluid. Having guys, several players that this is going to be their 3rd year in our system is it's great. Obviously, it goes without saying that it can be more player driven, player led in so many ways. 3rd year, 4th year players are going to play in a confident, more of a precise, confident, aggressive, physical way, and more consistent at the end of the day. And if you're a great player, you're a great unit, you're a great team, consistency is a word that people are going to use to describe you. And, and I tell the coaches that, and you're looking at, recruits. And I think that's an important piece. Who are the guys who are going to play at a really high they're going to be here every single day. They may not ever get here, but they're not going to be down here. And guys that play in an uneven way, or they compete, or they show up in an uneven way, you're going to have uneven results. And so that's what we all want. And having a lot of experience back should lends credibility to believe that you're going to have that.
Well, and that's what, I look at your defenses at your last stop, and it seemed like there was just a great handing down of, here's how you work, here's how we play, from the older players to the younger players. And does it feel like that's what's happening now?
No doubt. Yeah. There's where we're at in January, February, going into March now, compared to just a year ago, or even, 2 years ago, which seems in dog years, a decade ago. We've made a tremendous amount of improvement in every way. So whether that's the physical things, your strength, your speed, your depth, having more able guys that can play at a winning level, to the assuredness, the consistency, the leadership, all of those things. We're just incrementally, we've gotten better in all those areas, and so that makes it a lot of fun. That where the players are going to beat you to correct guys. Or again, they're going to set the tempo, for the day, the thermostat, they're going to move that needle where it needs to be every day.
So Jackson Arnold taking over, we got to see him start in the Alamo Bowl, and it was one of those things where you see the flashes, but then you also see some true freshmen making his first start kind of moments. But how valuable was that experience for him going into this offseason?
Well, starting the game and, having some success in the game and certainly some adversity in the game is no doubt going to pay off for him. And the number one reason why is Jackson has got all the right stuff, how to handle adversity, how to handle success, what the process looks like, and staying focused on the things that he can control. He's got great self-awareness. He's got great toughness. He's an incredible competitor. No matter what happens, Jackson's got a unique quality where he just doesn't flinch. But he takes great ownership. He's very accountable to himself and his play. But he's hard on himself and demanding of himself, but he's not going to crush, his own spirit. So I feel great about where he's at. And again, being able to learn from Dylan last year, he'll be the first one to say how invaluable that was for his freshman year. Again, Dylan being one of the most successful collegiate quarterbacks in the history of college football, not just last season. And Dylan was a great leader and did a great job pouring into Jackson, and then it was well received by Jackson. So it's all going to matter, going into this season. And you feel great about that. You have 3 or 4, however you look at it, returning starters is it. But he does have, with the portal and several guys that played, maybe didn't start but played. He has a great group around him coming back that can help him be successful. And that's going to be, if he's going to be successful, it's going to be because of everybody around him.
So I noticed on Wednesday you had all of your freshmen and newcomers. They met with your local media, had a kind of a media day for pre-spring practice. So like David Stone, who's the big time defensive tackle recruit that you guys signed, he's doing interviews. Most coaches don't let those freshmen talk. Don't let them, and they kind of hide them away from the world until they played in a game, or maybe even until they're sophomores. What was it that went into putting these guys out there and letting them kind of have their say?
Yeah, and I'm not I feel really good about the coaches. We're recruiting to a certain model, a certain type of young guy that can handle that moment. I'm not afraid of what he may or may not say. We're like everybody. We do media training for all of our guys and try to get them in a comfortable space, using their platform the right way, promoting things, the right types of things. I want our fans to know these players. I want our fans to feel connected to them. This is a time of the year where I don't think that it's not a time where there's going to be a lot of distractions. And so I think it's an appropriate time. I want our players to understand the standards and the platform that they're on when it's at the University of Oklahoma. There's a long line of media, a huge following, a passionate fan base. I want to feed our media with great content. I know they'll utilize it the right way. I think there's a marketing aspect of all of it that I'm not naive to, that I think can be a really positive thing for Oklahoma. And I'm trying to get these players attached to the brand and the opportunity and the standards that Oklahoma represents as well. And again, if they're who we think they are, when we recruit them, I think this is an opportunity to help them mature and grow in all the right ways sooner rather than later. And we're expecting to get on that field and play and compete at a mature level. This pales in comparison, to me, to what that platform is.
Well, Stone's mad at us because we had him number 29 in the whole country, and that's lower than anybody else. So I like the fire, though. I like that he's mad. I think that's probably a good sign for you that he's coming in ready to play. But you guys have so much experience to kind of help those guys out. It seems like that seems hard to do now in this era of college football, to have older players plus some depth that you feel comfortable with. How do you how do you develop a culture where you can keep those guys?
Yeah, I think it's, I think you got to come from a place where you're genuine, try to be authentic. Real relationships is what it's all about to me. And, if you're looking for real commitment from guys and all the things that commitment, requires, the leadership, the buy-in, the servant mindset of the older guys to the younger guys, where they're just keepers of the jersey, if you will, that there's a name on the front of their jersey that represents excellence, that hopefully they're attracted to, and it's something that they, again, feel a responsibility that they've got to live up to the standards of those expectations as the next wave of leaders or the next wave of the players. That's a responsibility when you come to a place like Oklahoma. And so you're trying to constantly nurture that buy-in of what that means. Everything matters. And the older guys or guys that have been here have an investment. So they should care about the guys. And my promise is to the players that are in that locker room, I'm going to recruit young men that value the things that you value and that align with our values and standards as a program. And if they're not about that, then I'm not going to recruit them. And so our players, immediately they understand if we're going to have real commitment from whether it's them or our new players, that there's got to be connection. And so we work hard at trying to nurture, those relationships. And but it starts from the top. All of us as coaches having, again, strong relationships in the recruiting process. And then that doesn't start when there's not like some kind of change up when they get here. It's with the same guy and tough, demanding, relentless, passionate, focused on winning, competing at the highest level, all those things. And we want to bring in young men that align with that.
Well, and having teammates that are about the same things. I was thinking about this because I heard you did an interview with Bob Stoops a few months ago, and he was talking to you about the group of linebackers that you played with at Kansas State. And I had forgotten just how accomplished this group wound up being. So it's you, Mike Eckler, who's the special teams coordinator at Tennessee, Kirby Hocutt, who's the athletic director at Texas Tech, and Laird Veach, who's the athletic director at Memphis. Did you realize when you're playing with these dudes that they are destined for great things, or was it a case of we're all kind of alike here? We all have the right work ethic here.
Yeah, I thought we're all a bunch of misfits and underdogs, and but foundationally there was like a belief. There's a belief system. Bill Schneider's in the Hall of Fame for a reason, and he's a developer of men. And I think that's the greatest calling of coaching is the development of people. And we were bought in, we were all in before it became a popular slogan. And I say that with all due respect. Committed guys that believed in, big team, little me, what sacrifice, what work ethic, outworking people, out hustling people, out thinking people, creating value for yourself. loving one another, doing it through relationships, being passionate and loving what you are doing. And I've always believed this. You'll never be great at anything if you don't love all of it. And so we were baptized, if you will, in the Bill Snyder and Bob Stoops, as some people know, some people don't know. He was
and Jim Levitt too,
and co-defensive coordinator along with Coach Levitt, who was a linebackers coach.
Yep.
And I think one of their many qualities, all three of those men that we just mentioned, Coach Snyder and Coach Stoops and Coach Levitt, I think that they all had this unique ability to get more out of less. And they were a believer in a vision, and they did an amazing job of creating vision constantly and pushing guys past their limits without breaking our spirits. And so that's a unique ability, but they had this mindset that was relentless about becoming the best and being committed to your best so that you could become the best one day. And as you know, in 1998, as many people know, we were the #1 team in college football for most of the year, and then we lost a heartbreaker in overtime in our championship game, and then Bob Stoops gets hired at Oklahoma, and then several of us go to Oklahoma. But Bill Snyder and those coaches would tell you, they would give credit to Coach Snyder and the Hayden Fry tree and whatnot. But Bill Snyder, what he was able to do there at Kansas State, and the people and the success stories, it's not just us, it's many, many more, much better stories than all of us misfits. But it's pretty cool. We were in the same meeting room. We're still all good friends, and, life gets busy and things like that. But we all have we all inherited, a skill set that leads to success no matter what you do. We were able to put it in our backpacks or our back pocket and bring it into the environments, that we were in. And so very, very thankful and appreciative of, how we grew up in this profession, in a locker room. And that's, at the end of the day, we all got these amazing transferable skills from a locker room. And that's one of the things that.
Does it transfer, because you coach a different brand of athlete than Brent Venables right now,
Yeah.
but can you coach the same way?
Absolutely. I wouldn't know any other way. And again, you just come from a place when you love it, people know. They're like, okay, all right, it's a real one. All right. Not trying to trick anybody, Part of being a great leader is inspiring and challenging and motivating, pushing the right buttons, but man, being a doer and not just a talker. And that's what I'm always looking for. I look for the same qualities in much better talent, but same qualities in people. Guys that believe in, again, a blue collar mindset, and they understand that you're going to get what you earn, and that, sometimes success doesn't happen right away. That's okay. You kind of got to go through it if you want to get to it, and it does resonate. And especially when you're going to be right standing in the A gap with them. And I've always prided myself in, not the opposite, because the players are they're gonna.
Is that why Jimmy Greenbeans goes and runs the scout team sometimes as a QB?
Don't do what I say, do what I do. The saying is, because that's what young people, they're not going to necessarily do what you say, they're going to do what you do and try to emulate that. And I've always believed if we don't, they won't, as a staff. And so standing right next to them, I think, is what it's all about. And then that's also we all love to compete. I believe we're all, as human beings, we're all called to compete. And not only that, but do it with everything we got, whatever opportunity we have, whatever skill set we have, and do it with everything you got. And I believe in living life that way. And when you do that, you can lay your head down at night with no regrets. No regrets. I get everything I got in today, in this moment, in this locker room, into these players. That's what the players deserve. And again, I'm looking for guys that align with that. And and if they're not, that's okay. It's just, we're not going to do a locker room together.
I'm pumped now. I did get Jerry Schmidt to draw me up a workout. I've done a few of his before in a previous life, so it's fine. But no, I understand why you guys are looking for what you're looking for, and it's gonna be fun to watch.
It's having this, it's camaraderie. It's going through stuff together. It's not what you become. It's always about what you overcome, and that's a blast. And maximizing the small windows in life, the small moments in life, whether it's a year, it's 3 years, it's today. And everybody, again, man, everybody aligned that, you locked together, locked in arms, and you're going through life, you on the journey together. It's what it's about. And I'll be very honest, when a young man chooses to come to Oklahoma, and I've always believed this is a lifelong decision, it's a forever decision. And so this is just the beginning. And the locker room's important. This experience while you're in college, I believe it's the most transformative time of the life of these young people. And man, I want them to squeeze all the juice that they can out of it. And I want to give every ounce of the opportunity, the window, the time that they have in college. And because you don't get to go do it twice, you get one shot at it. And so I want them to have no regrets. That's a personal responsibility that I have. I don't want them to have any regret. Doesn't mean I make it's easy in any way, shape, or form. I'm not compromising the things that I know are what are going to help young men be successful, not only for today, but for the rest of their lives. And so not compromising in any way, shape, or form. And so in this moment that's kind of crazy, me and many others like me, we're not going to flinch. We're going to embrace it. You always adapt and evolve. Nothing stays the same, ever. Never has, never will. You have to have a willingness, not compromise your values, your belief system, but you do have to conform and evolve. I believe in that. But I don't think you have to coach them any different in it anyway. I don't. I just don't.
Well, and it's great to hear that, because you hear some people say, "Oh, I can't work with these kids." I've always thought there have always been people in every generation that wanted to work hard. There have always been people who didn't, and you just got to find the ones that do, right?
Yeah, and listen, I love guys that love it too. Okay, those are your favorite players, the ones that you got to beat them over the head with a bat to get them out of the facility, and they can't get enough. Not everybody is the exact same though, and that's okay too. But as a coach, you just want guys that have, when their motives are pure, and that doesn't mean that they can't be, concerned with finances, or playing time. Those are things you try to appeal to their voice of reason through all of it. But if that's their only motives, it's about, making as much money as they can. For most coaches, they're in it for the long haul. That's not why you got into coaching. That's not the reason I went into a locker room and tried to stay like hell to stay in a locker room, is because the locker room changed my life. It wasn't money that changed my life. It was a locker room. It was people. It was belief. It was learning how to challenge myself as a man. It was getting the most out of myself. It was relationships. And for me, I feel like I maximized that window. I created value. I created opportunity. I was, it was an interview for 3 or 4 years for me. And the people in that locker room that were in leadership positions, they chose to hire me because of my body of work, because of my strain, because of my ability to overcome, because of my persistence and my commitment and my passion and my work ethic and my detail. That's why I've created value in my career. And so whether it's in a locker room or it's in a boardroom or it's in the NFL or it's, on Wall Street, whatever it is, your success and your longevity and sustainability in those different environments are going to be because of those things. The harder you work, the luckier you get. And so, I do think that people can lose their ways. And this is the crazy time. I think we all be liars if we didn't say there's a lot of chaos. There needs to be some constraints, so that everybody's playing with the same set of rules, if you will, and where people don't lose their senses and don't lose, like, you're still dealing with 17, 18-year-olds. And we all know that when we were all 17 or 18 years old, we thought a lot of, in many ways, we think different. We compete different. We're just at a different maturity level. And, when we were 30, we see things a little different than we did when we were 17 or 18. Just like when we were 14, we were different when we were freshmen in high school than we were when we were senior in high school. Everything's different. I wasn't driving, I wasn't shaving, I was afraid of girls. But when you're a senior, maybe you're in a different spot. And when you go to college, there's this another, transformation that takes place. You're going to be a lot different, how you think, how you work, how you act, how you respond, how you compete when you're a senior or a junior than you are as a freshman. And, these are not NFL players right now. They're babies. And so I think that, and listen, they're grown men too. And, but we got to meet them where they're at and take them to where they can't take themselves. We got to help them to be good stewards of this space that's new. And so we've set up our program in a way where I'm just one man. I'm a coach, but I'm also a dad. And I'm also trying to be, my taillights to be the headlights for the players, and try to think for them, again, 10, 15, 20 years down the road as well. That's a responsibility that we have. We all do. The village that we've created, we all have that responsibility here, to help them manage this time of their life and don't let them lose their way in the middle of the chaos. And so education, manhood, the maturation process, being good stewards of their platform, their brand. Certainly, there's a financial piece to it, but help them to maximize and be prepared when that day comes where they can't play college football anymore, or they can't play the game anymore. Man, they are ready to go dominate for the rest of their life. They've discovered all their passions beyond the game of football, because you can't play the game forever. What do I want to be? What do I want to stand for? What kind of a dad? What kind of a husband? What kind of a father? What kind of a leader? What kind of an agent of change in my community do I want to be? What do I want to be known for? What do I want my legacy to be? And I think those things are important, because there's going to be a day when you meet your maker where it all matters. Every single, a lot of those decisions are going to matter on that day. And it's not going to be about, my stars or my rankings or, what my bank account looks like. None of that stuff's going to matter. And so I want to make sure that we keep everything in its place, that we're good stewards of all of it, and keep the main thing, along the way.
Well, good luck. Sounds like you're ready to hit the practice field right now.
Yeah.
Enjoy spring practice.
Countdown's going.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate you and what you do.
That's Brent Venables, and really interesting what he keeps saying about teaching the guys to be stewards of all this new stuff, the NIL and all that. It's a different tack than I've heard from any other coach. And I know there's some coaches that are out there trying to do this too, but it's the first time I've heard it expressed that way. And I think it's interesting because, we're coming off last week where you heard Nick Saban in that story with Chris Lowe at ESPN talking about how he was kind of fed up because players were coming in asking how much they'd make, asking, am I going to be guaranteed to have playing time? And what Brent Venables is saying is we got to make sure we recruit guys who aren't going to ask that. And there's no guarantee that you're going to get a whole team full of guys that's not what's the first thing on their mind, or whether that's the playing time or the money. But you can kind of weed that out in the recruiting process. And it's the old you recruit your own problem situation. Now, in defense of Nick Saban, most of the guys that were on the roster that are leaving the roster now were being recruited before this stuff even started. But with Venables, it's interesting that he talks about teaching them to be good stewards of it, because this group of players is the first group of players that's going to have this level of financial freedom and this level of leverage. And they're the ones that are going to pass down to the younger players, like how you use that. How do you utilize that? And it's something that can be utilized for good, or it's something that can be a problem for the team or for the individual player. Like if you're an individual player who's only concerned about money, or who says playing time is the most important thing for me, and I'm not going to be too concerned about development potentially for the NFL or just into being a better player, it's going to cause you a problem down the road too. And listen, I don't envy any of these coaches having to deal with it. I don't envy any of these parents having to deal with it. I remember what I was like at 18 years old. I was not fun to deal with. I knew everything. You couldn't tell me anything. Now imagine I've just had all these football coaches kissing my butt and telling me I'm the best player ever. It sounds like Venables and company trying to do less of the butt kissing on the recruiting end, which you kind of have to do, because one of the good things that Alabama always did, that Nick Saban always did, is he didn't kiss a lot of butts on the recruiting trail. He said, we will give you an opportunity, but he didn't say you're going to play. He didn't say you're going to get this, you're going to get that. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see how this works, which coaches figure out how to thrive in this new environment. And Venables sounds like he's got a good plan. We need to see if it works. I would argue that his rival over in Austin, Steve Sarkisian, seems to have a pretty good plan for this, seems to understand how this works pretty well, and seems to be able to add to the roster through the transfer portal, but also develop the players they have on the roster. Texas does not seem to be losing really good players to other teams. They seem to be able to keep the ones they want to keep. So all of this is going to be fascinating going forward. Really interesting question from Zach in the chat while we were talking to Brent Venables. Do Oklahoma fans like the Jordan symbol? Feels weird having a basketball player symbol on a football uniform. This takes me back to something I've said. Now, not for North Carolina, because obviously North Carolina is Michael Jordan's alma mater and it needs to be unblemished for them. But for Oklahoma, Michigan, Florida, UCLA, I think that's all of them. I might be missing one. The other Jordan schools, I feel like the Jordan logo should have a football in his hand when it's on the football uniform. Like for their basketball teams, yes, by all means, keep the basketball in his hands. But when it's the Oklahoma football uniform and the Michigan football uniform, put a football in the man's hand. I think Mike would be okay with that. Maybe. Just don't put a baseball bat in his hands. I think there's still a little PTSD from the minor league experience there. So yeah, just put a football in the man's hand. But we got to talk basketball. We're going to put the basketball back in Michael Jordan's hand and bring in our own MJ, James Fletcher III, joins us. All right, James, before we get into who is going to the NCAA tournament, we already got 4 teams that have punched their tickets. Congratulations to Longwood, Drake, Morehead State, and Stetson. Stetson, the Hatters, big party in DeLand, Florida. They're in the NCAA tournament. Let's talk about the teams at the top, though, because you had opportunities for movement. Tennessee loses to Kentucky, the final game of the regular season. But, Arizona loses to Bronny and company.
Yeah, it was a struggle there. Late night. We actually talked about, I think last time I was on, the struggle of one of these late night games is going to go sideways. And we just knew it was going to happen. And it was going to make us rethink everything when it came to bracketology. Because before that Arizona game went the wrong direction, I think we were looking at Arizona returning to the 1 line, having Tennessee fall back onto that second tier right along with North Carolina, who had just knocked off Duke earlier in the day. Instead, Arizona takes a bad loss, a loss to a quad 2 opponent, but an opponent who is below 500 in conference. Like they're just not very good right now. So they now fall below even North Carolina. So now it's Tennessee in that last 1 seed spot. North Carolina moves up to the top team on the 2 line. And then Arizona, they kind of fumbled away their opportunity to get back in control. And hopefully, for them, it would have been, the formula was win out in that Pac-12 tournament. And then you probably have a 1 seed. Now that's pretty much gone. They're going to be a 2 seed, I think, on Selection Sunday.
Right, because the USC loss is a lot worse than, say, Tennessee's loss to Kentucky, because Kentucky's a very good team.
Yeah, Kentucky, first of all, is surging. They're moving up on the seed lines here. I think they're a 3 seed now as we talk today. They're also a quad 1 opponent. And so the way that everything shifts out for Tennessee, another loss gets added to the quad 1 side. And you kind of look at it and you say, okay, that we can live with that. The quad 2 one, though, for Arizona, it's on the lower end of the quad 2. And that's not taken into account when you just look at the pure numbers. But that's something that will reflect in their computer numbers as those take a little bit of a dip.
So Kentucky, by the way, James, I'm curious. It feels like when they are hitting on all cylinders, they can beat any. Like I would not be that shocked if Kentucky were to play, say, UConn in the NCAA tournament and beat them, because it feels like when Reed Sheppard and Rob Dillingham are on, like they are really tough to deal with.
Yeah, Kentucky is going to be the most interesting team in the NCAA tournament. I don't think there's going to be any question about it. They're going to face somebody early on in the tournament where we're going to have questions. We're going to talk about some mid-major team that's got the players, that's got the coach, and some people are going to pick them to knock off Kentucky. They're going to say this team is too young. They're going to say they've struggled too much on the defensive end. They're going to question that big man rotation, and maybe they will be right. But also, if Kentucky can survive that, I think there's also a large group of people who are going to then pick them to go to the Final Four because they've got all the talent they need. They've got Reed Sheppard, who has just continued to improve. He looks better and better every time you watch him. He looks to really be the leader on the floor of this team, even as a freshman. The way that he's able to control things on both ends of the floor, he has really picked up their defense with his intensity, with his just pressure that he provides on the perimeter. And then a Rob Dillingham, we've talked at length about him, what he provides you on offense. I think that getting Ugo Onyenso to take kind of a step forward from a rim protection standpoint, he has looked a lot better playing defense for the Wildcats in recent weeks. Justin Edwards has been, I think, maybe the biggest change for them. He's a five-star guy. You had to put him on the floor, and he provides them that no one else on this roster provides from a length and athleticism and just a skill on the wing standpoint. Him rounding into form and looking like the five-star that he was billed as has been the biggest difference maker, I think, from when they were struggling a few weeks ago to now looking like one of the best teams in the country.
Now, for those who are just kind of checking in on college basketball and getting ready for the tournament, the Reed Sheppard thing, they did not see this in recruiting. So he's Jeff Sheppard's son. Jeff Sheppard, one of the unforgettables, one of the guys who helped bring Kentucky basketball back from probation in the early 90s. Like this family is Kentucky basketball royalty. But did they see? I mean, this is a lottery pick.
Yeah, I think that there's a few things with Reed Sheppard that kind of get lost in the shuffle. Nobody questioned that he was a really good basketball player. A lot of people question, would he be able to do it this quickly? Because very few are able to do it this quickly. Now, if you want to have the discussion of him as a four-star recruit, somebody who came in, there were other people ahead of him. I mean, he still comes off the bench in a majority of their games this season. So for Reed Sheppard to have this kind of emergence, it brings up questions that we find every single year about the kids who aren't necessarily at the prep school. You know, Reed Sheppard, a local Kentucky kid, he dominated in the high school ranks. He was one of the best players in the country in high school. However, when you don't maybe put up some of the performances at the big AAU events, when you don't play for a Montverde, an IMG, you know, one of those big time prep programs that's on national TV that you're seeing day in and day out, hearing everything about, playing with the best players in the country, sometimes you don't hear as much about them as the five-star kind of guy. So was it that, or maybe is he just learning and fitting in, and is he somebody who is willing to take on a role, and then because of that, he gets more added to his plate and more added to his plate across time as he continues to show what he can do.
And so now we got to ask the uncomfortable question, because we spent all of Friday talking about Robbie Avila, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Larry Nerd, and they lost. Indiana State lost in the Arch Madness final. So the Missouri Valley Conference tournament, it was Drake and them. Now Drake is a very good team too. The question is now, is the Missouri Valley Conference a two-bid league? And I remember back when Porter Moser, who's the Oklahoma coach now, he was the Loyola Chicago coach. Like, he would complain about this all the time. Like, felt like it was too good of a league. And I think, James, before all this massive realignment, like if you go back to the old Missouri Valley, it was a two-bid league a lot of years. Sometimes it felt like a three-bid league. But because teams sort of moved, quote unquote, up in league to the A10 or to the, I'm trying to think, I think there's some in the American now too, and in the Big East. Is it is it harder to be a 2-bid league, or do you think the net ranking numbers will just make it okay for them?
I think that it is difficult to be a multi-bid league when you're one of these mid-major conferences, especially when you see the Loyola Chicagos leave for the A10. You've had other teams throughout the history of this conference who have kind of left for bigger and better things. But this year feels different. Indiana State kind of had this moniker all season of what they were, and they proved it in the computer numbers. They are top 30 still, even after the loss, in the net rankings, and that's going to be huge for them because no team in the history of the net rankings has ever been left out of the NCAA tournament as a top 30 team. So really important to note that. They've also got something that Drake didn't have when we talked about the bubble conversation. Drake suffered 2 quad 3 losses throughout the year, and while they had a great overall record, while they had some of the top end wins, they did not have that clean slate at the bottom that the committee is looking for. Indiana State has that. They have not lost a game to a quad 3, quad 4 opponent. And so things a lot easier for the Sycamores to make their case when they're looking at that resume they see at the top. Okay, maybe they didn't play, 10, 11 quad 1 games throughout the season, but they took care of business when they were supposed to take care of business. And the computers say that they did so just how they would be expected to. So I like their chances. I think right now they're in that last 4 in. I think that Drake probably also, as things stand, obviously we're going to have things shift. Where the bubble lands is dependent on a couple more conference championships that we're going to see over the next few days. But right now I've got them both as an 11 seed, Indiana State having to go through the play-in Dayton to secure their official spot. But for Drake, that automatic bid should come out as one of the best among the mid-majors.
I feel like this is going to help the ratings of the first 4. I mean, we got stories coming out now about what Indiana State's doing NIL-wise to keep Robbie Avila. They're also trying to pony up a lot of dough to keep their coach. That may not be possible at this point. It looks like Schurz may be the hottest candidate in the country. So I'm curious though about some other parts, deeper into the bracket. We're talking about teams that we thought were locks for the tournament, but then moving within the seed lines. That Florida Vanderbilt loss or Florida losing at Vanderbilt, for example, like that is just a horrific way to lose a game. Florida just melted down the stretch. Did that cost them like a whole seed line or two, losing that game?
It likely did. I had Florida as one of the best candidates to move up a seed line from 6 to 5 earlier in that day. You look at what they've done. They beat Alabama over the past week. We talked about them before as one of the teams that was unblemished outside of quad 1 just a few weeks ago, right there among all the best teams in the country. Well, Vanderbilt is not one of the best teams in the country, so that is now off of their resume. They did take a hit in some of the computer numbers as well, and I think it really did drop them from a team who potentially was going to move up from 6 to 5. Now a team that's probably closer to that 7 seed line and going to have to do a little bit of work in the SEC tournament to get that position back as a 6 seed.
Now let's talk about the ones that are squarely on the bubble in the high majors. Who needs a deep run in their conference tournament to make sure they get in?
I think I look at a trio of teams in the ACC that really need to show something, and not just show something, but separate from the other teams. You've got Virginia, Wake Forest, and Pitt. All of those right now are in my first 4 out because of that Indiana State loss. It shifted Virginia down from that last team in the field to now they've got to get something done. So those 3 teams, it's going to be really important for one of them to maybe, depending on how the bracket lays out, how the different results go, but if you could beat one of those other teams head to head, I think that might go just as far as being able to claim a quad 2 or a quad 1 win added to your resume when we get down to it. But yeah, those 3 teams are going to have to make some kind of run in the ACC tournament if they want to be in the field on Selection Sunday.
ACC tournament should be fun. And by the way, I was thinking about this, James, today. 5 years ago, they're having baby races, like babies crawling on the floor at the ACC tournament. Oh no, it was 4 years ago. Sorry, I'm bad. This is a bad at math show. 4 years ago, the next day, the whole world shuts down. I don't blame the baby races. I still blame Rudy Gobert, but it is amazing how like, think about that. Like, there was no NCAA tournament 4 years ago. What a blessing this is that it's back.
It is. It's crazy to think about. And one of the teams that, just to touch on it quickly, that I think is getting almost a second chance. We've seen all, I'm sure everyone has seen all over social media, the this is repeated from 2020. This is the same as it was. You know, you see those all the time, comparing 2024 to 2020. Yep. Well, how about the Dayton Flyers having maybe the best team in the country in 2020, and now having a top 25 team under Anthony Grant, maybe a chance to make a deep NCAA tournament run and avenge that team that was so good but didn't get a chance to compete for a national title.
Poor Obi Toppin. Oh, this is true. Now, unfortunately, Florida State can't do the same thing. I think they were the best team in the ACC that year. But yeah, wow. So could be a big weekend for Dayton, because you're right. Dayton could be, a very good seed in the NCAA tournament, and then Robbie Avila might be coming to Dayton because they might have played their way into the first four by losing that conference tournament final. All right, we had a 1 seed lose to a 10 seed out in the Big Sky last night. It could get wild here, James. Cannot wait for the rest of the week. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
James Fletcher III, our resident bracketologist here at On3, and this is going to be a very, very interesting week. As he mentioned, the ACC tournament seems to be the place where you want to pay the most attention. What is Virginia doing? What is Wake Forest doing? How are those teams progressing through the bracket? Do they get upset? Because I think some of those go deep. They got a good chance of making the field. And then a week from now, we'll know the field. We're going to bring James on Friday, and we're going to get everybody ready, because I realize a lot of you guys, you come here for football, but you are going to be invested in the NCAA basketball tournament, because we all are. We all get invested in it. And we want to make sure that you have a chance in your pool against Steve from accounting, and, against the lady in the other department who always just Christmas trees or bracket and wins. Like, you need a chance. And so James is going to come on Friday and get you completely ready for the NCAA tournament, completely ready to get the bracket released on Sunday. We'll talk about all the storylines from the season, all the key players who have emerged. There's some familiar faces that if you tuned into the tournament last year and have not watched any basketball since then, you're going to be like, where did that guy come from? Wait, wasn't he on this team? Trust me, it's going to be fun. And we got a lot of football coming up. Tomorrow on the show, scheduled to have Notre Dame coach Marcus Freeman. Later in the week, Ole Miss defensive end Jared Ivey, who is awesome, just awesome to talk to. You're going to love him too. Guys, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm here in paradise, but real paradise is talking college football with you. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.